Thank you for tuning in to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Whether you're listening during your commute, while working out, or just relaxing at home, we appreciate you. Every download, every listen, and every subscription means a lot. Up next, the 12 Kyle podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I am your boy, 12 Kyle. Man, check this one out. On this episode, what I want to talk about is a scenario that happened to a young man, a father, if you will. I am a member of several Facebook groups. I'll be honest, some of the Facebook groups that I'm in, I really don't even know why I'm in the Facebook groups, but I'm in there nonetheless. And every now and then when I'm scrolling on Facebook, I will see posts from different groups. I'll be honest, I really don't participate as far as the discussion because I think a lot of discussions that happen on Facebook really are a lot to deal with. So I was just scrolling one particular day and I came upon this post from a group that I'm in. And in the group, what caught my attention was the headline, and it is the title of this show. He found out that his daughter was a stripper. Or he found out that his daughter was stripping, I should say. So before I get into the gist of what happened, let me just give you a brief perspective, just from a male's point of view. Here's the thing. Most men like strippers. Now, not everybody's going to go to a strip club. Not everybody's going to go, toss a few dollars. Not everybody's going to frequent them on a regular basis. But I will venture to say that most men, under the sound of my voice or watching on YouTube, thank you for watching, I appreciate it. Most men, at least by the age of 40, have attended a strip club at one particular time in their life. I don't think that that's a stretch to say, and it covers all races, right? It doesn't matter if you're black, white, Hispanic, Latino, Asian, whatever. I think most men, will tell you that they have been to what we call the shoe show, because we don't refer to them as strippers, we call them shoe models, because actually with a nude body and shoes, they're modeling shoes, they're not really stripping. Shout out to those of you who heard my previous episodes about the shoe shows. If you haven't heard those episodes, after listening to this episode, go back and listen to them. Those were quite comical. I have quite a few strip club episodes that were quite funny. But nonetheless, most men, like I said, have at some point in time been, myself included, obviously. And I live in a city in Atlanta where it is what some would call the black strip club capital of the world. I don't think that's a stretch. I've been to, not all, but I've been to probably most of the popular ones. And it's funny because anytime in some of my group chats, if we get to talking about strip clubs, it's funny the stories that you will get, and you'll hear guys say, "Oh, have you been to here?" Or "I've been over here and I had a good time." Or "I've been to this one." Or "I never been here before." Like for me, in the city of Atlanta, like I've never been to the Blue Flame. Shout out to the Blue Flame. Never been there before. For whatever reason, there were a couple of times that I should have gone, but I didn't go. The Blue Flame is way on the other side of the city, and it is in, the hood. It's on Bankhead Highway. If you know about Atlanta, you know about Bankhead. But I've never been, and I will go at some point. Because I just want to see what the flame is about. I've heard so many stories, uh, so much, um, so much happens there. But nonetheless, what I want to get to is like from a male's perspective, men who obviously are heterosexual men, they enjoy looking at a woman's body, obviously a nude body, if you will. And if you can you know make your body do different things, make body parts move or jiggle or shake or rattle or whatever the case may be, they love that even more. But what's interesting is the psyche, and it's not really something that we talk about, but it's something that is ever present, is the psyche when it comes to how we feel about strippers. Um, I'm sure many of you have heard the joke, but if you haven't, the famous comedian Chris Rock, in one of his many stand-ups, talked about, his idea, or his goal as a father was to keep his daughters off the pole, and that's just what he meant. Like he had to be um, a presence in their life. He had to be the man in their life to the point where they would never want to strip. Now, part of the psyche when it comes to how some men think about strippers is that they think that I can't say all. Some men think that these strippers have come from either broken homes, their fathers weren't a part of their lives, they were never told that they were loved. Some have been abused, some have been trafficked, some have been groomed to these positions. And so men tend to look at strippers, um, obviously in a transactional way, because if I go to the strip club, I'm looking to get a transaction. I'm looking to pay you to dance for me for, the time that the song is on, or how many other songs I pay for. Um, and so it's a transactional thing. So like sometimes even in the midst of being in a strip club, a guy will fall in love in a strip club and, think like, okay, I got you for this song, but I want you for this night. I want you for this fantasy. And that's what it is. It's the fantasy and the psyche of the environment, and then what she's doing for you and what you can do for her. And so for men, it goes back to that Chris Rock line. Like a lot of men see strippers in a certain light, be it good or bad, right? But they would never want to see their child, their daughter, in that same light. When the reality is, if you're at a strip club and you're having a stripper dance for you, that is somebody's daughter. That's somebody's child. That's somebody's that's somebody's child. It truly is. And so the psyche of men is that some men is that they could see wanting to fantasize and do all of these things to and for this woman. But they would not want to see or fantasize or have someone else see or fantasize these things about their child. Let me say that again. The fantasy is about what you see. It's about what she can do for you. It's about what your dollars are going to do. And in some cases, it could be about what happens what happens in the champagne room. And that's all transactional. But as a father, you would as particularly if you're a father who has a daughter, you would never want to see your child in that position. And so it is a very, very interesting dynamic when you think about it from a male's perspective, because again, you go into a strip club, you see these beautiful women. And if you're someplace like Atlanta, they ain't got nothing on. There's no such things as pasties and all of this stuff. I mean, it's all out. I mean, you can get a dance right there while you eating your wings at the strip club. But as a man and as a guy, you're not thinking that this is a person. For some, they are just objects. And while that's not fair, that's a part of the phenomenon, and that's a part of the attraction, and that's a part of the allure of attending a strip club. So it's an interesting dynamic, and it's one that I'll explore as I tell you this story. Right now, it's time for a commercial break. On the other side of the break, I will give you the story that the gentleman shared with us, and the fallout from it. Sit tight. We'll be back in just a second.
Are you feeling nostalgic for the golden eras of rap and soul music? If so, tune in to the Rap Soul Podcast. We are your weekly journey through the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, spotlighting the music and the hidden gems that shaped the soundtrack of our lives. From the powerful beats to the soulful melodies, we bring you the best of the past with fresh insights and stories. Rediscover the music that defined a generation. Subscribe to the Rap Soul Podcast and enjoy the vibes.
And just like that, we are back. Once again, it's your boy 12 Kyle. This is the 12 Kyle Podcast. And we're talking about the scenario of he found out that his daughter is a stripper. As I mentioned before the break, I'm a part of a Facebook group, and the story that I'm going to tell you is one that came up in the Facebook group that I'm in. And it was very interesting, to say the least, to read it, and subsequently the fallout, if you will. And also the thing that was interesting was that the guy who posted it, he was seeking advice. And what was interesting was the advice that he got from the post. So I'll read it to you in its entirety. He says, "I'm thinking about kicking my daughter out of the house because she's stripping." He says, simply put, "I'm not going to drag this into a long post. My daughter is 21 years old. She has younger siblings. I just found out that she started stripping. She lives here at home with me. I'm going to give her an ultimatum that if she continues, she's going to have to leave. Just want to see what others would do or have done. I have been present and I have been active her entire life. I am disappointed as fuck." The end. So that's a lot, right? It truly is a lot. I mean, 21 years old, living in your home, and you're stripping. And he said that he's been a part of her life. Again, that goes back to the Chris Rock thing, where Chris Rock said, "Hey, I want to make sure that, one of my goals is to make sure that my daughters stay off the pole. I'm active in their lives, and I constantly tell them I love them." And Chris Rock goes on in the bit, but you get the gist of what he was saying. And at the time, I think Chris Rock was actually going through a divorce from his first wife and the mother of his two daughters. And I don't think Chris Rock has any sons. But it's an interesting, thing that's happening here, is that this guy is seeking the advice from other men because he found out that his daughter is stripping. Now, his daughter's 21 years old and she's living at home. As a man and as a father and as the quote unquote head of the household, do you allow that to happen? How do you handle it? is there really a right or wrong answer? Kicking her out is a lot, because here's the thing about a 21-year-old, and I speak this as I have, you know, two sons who have eclipsed 21 years old. At 21, they don't really know what they're doing. Like, I mean, like, you're still coming into who you are. At least some. Now, some kids at 21 know who they are, know where they're going, they're focused, they're driven, the whole nine, right? But like, I can only remember me at 21. If my mom had kicked me out of the house at 21, could I have survived? Yeah, I would have survived. But the difference was I was in college at the time, right? So I was already on a different path. So could I had survived? Of course. But here's the thing. I wasn't doing something that would get me kicked out of the house. And I'm not a woman, obviously. So, but in reading that, I felt for the brother, because that's not a easy call to make. It's not something that I would wish for any man. But the reality is, going back to the psyche of it, is that, yes, if I go into the Blue Flame tonight, I may be looking at a 21-year-old girl, young lady, excuse me, who really at 51, at 52, I'm sorry. At 52, I'm literally old enough to be her father. And so that dynamic for me is weird, because when I see 21, all I see is 21. Now, there are some men, and this is, I don't have time to go into this, but there's some men that are perfectly okay with being 52 years old and being able to fantasize about a 21-year-old. Me, I can't do it. I'm 51. If I were single and it was about a fantasy, or it was about being with another woman, it'd probably be a woman my age or somewhere around, no younger than 40. You know what I'm saying? And probably 35 at the least. But I do know men, and I've heard men discuss this, where they could be 55 and would not have a problem dating a 25-year-old. Now, dating is something different. That's a whole nother story for another subject, but you get my point. I think that's problematic, but that's just me. Nonetheless, I feel for the brother, because this is a tough spot to be in, because here's the thing. If he kicks his daughter out of the house, that doesn't mean that she's going to stop stripping. In fact, if she's making money and making what she would deem good money for her, the likelihood of her stop stripping is probably not going to happen. Now, he did mention that she has younger siblings, so I can understand how that dynamic plays. You don't want to expose the younger children to their big sister out here, sliding down poles. But the flip side is, and the reality is, at 21, she is old enough to make that call. She is old enough to make that decision. Now, doing it and living under his roof is something totally different. And it's problematic. And I can understand why he would want to remove her from the house. And even kicking a kid out ain't easy. I mean, I've never been in that situation. Hopefully and prayerfully, I will never have to be in that situation. But as a parent, how your child is. Your child's strengths. Your child's weaknesses. What they can do and what they're capable of doing and what maybe they may struggle to do. So I know that, well, at least I will assume that this is not an easy call for him to make that call to kick her out. So I didn't respond, because honestly, I didn't really have anything to offer, because that's still a very, very tough spot. And I'm not trying to be judgmental, because even in having a daughter, my daughter at the time of this recording is 13. if she were 21 and in the same situation, I mean, like, I would be very disappointed and very hurt. How would I handle it? I'm not even sure. I'll be honest. I'm just not sure. There's a part of me that would want to wring her neck. But then there's also a part of me that understands, like, at 21, you're calling your own shots. Now certain things you will or won't be able to do in my house. If you get in your own house and that's what you want to do, would I like it? No, I wouldn't like it at all. But at the end of the day, it's your body. But there's a lot that comes with stripping. There's a lot that you have to deal with mentally. It's more than just getting up on a stage and taking your clothes off. At least so I would assume. I've never stripped and never will. But I feel for the brother. And I went through quite a few of the comments, and they were all positive. Nobody passed judgment on the brother, but he was really stuck between a rock and a hard place. And, I really felt for him because, like, again, there's, no right or wrong answer. I'll read to you one comment. One guy said, "Hey, brother, I understand you're frustrated and you're disappointed in your daughter's decision, but let's make a logical decision and not a emotional one. Have a conversation with her and see where her head is at. Is this something short term to stack some money? Or is she trying to do it to move into something else that she really enjoys? Or is this something she's just doing aimlessly? You have to understand that you are her rock. And when you put her out, you're throwing her out to the wolves. And anybody that's thrown out to the wolves doesn't know the rules, and they're never going to come back. That's your baby girl. Love her and protect her." Close quote. And I thought that was a bit of sound advice. I mean, it's definitely an emotional decision if you say, okay, well, hey, you got to get the hell out. Like, again, I can't imagine kicking my kid out of my house. This is my house, but this is a place that I've built for my children. And, God forbid at some point, when I leave here, maybe my grandchildren, great grandchildren, whatever the case may be, it's our family home. I want them to always feel welcome in our family home because this is their home. The reality is I would not have gotten this house if it was just me. If I didn't have any kids and didn't have a wife, I'd probably be in a cardboard box somewhere. Not really, but you get my point. I'm not really somebody that needs all of this stuff. So I thought that was very, interesting and a very thoughtful response. So there was over 100 responses. I'm not going to read any more, but there was a lot of people giving sound advice. There was a lot of people, a lot of guys chiming in saying, like, look, man, you got to kick her out. Like, she can't do this to you. You're the man of the house. You're the king of the castle. You run the shit. So all of that happened. And there was a follow-up post a couple of days later. And it just says update. Quote, update to my daughter stripping and me contemplating kicking her out. I appreciate all of the advice. I ended up kicking her out. I think she has started to do drugs as well. My wife and I have tried to sit down with her and talked about alternate ways, and she just started going off and being disrespectful to my face and saying all kind of crazy stuff. We asked her, what if her baby sister found out what she was doing, and she joked about her dancing with her when she got older. So that was about it. She's gone. Close quote. So he ended up kicking her out. And as he alluded to, he thinks that she was doing drugs as well. Now that's a whole nother gamut, a whole nother different department where you just can't have. I mean, like, you can't do drugs, you can't strip and be disrespectful to me in the crib and your mom and yourself and be in my house. I get it. Like, his hands were tied. So, very tough call. So in conclusion, I'd like to ask you, for those of you listening and those of you watching on YouTube, hit me up in the comments section on YouTube. Hit me up on social media. You know where the podcast is, 12 Kyle Podcast across the board. wherever you can get a comment. I would genuinely like to know from the listener, how would you handle this? How should he have handled this? It sounds like he did all that he could, or at least from what he told us. And he made an executive decision. And at the end of the day, he has to live with that decision. But she also has to live with the decisions that she's making as well. And 21, out on your own, stripping, possibly doing drugs, that really ain't the way to go. But at the end of the day, a father has to do what's best for his child, even if it's giving them a hard lesson. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me. Once again, I want to thank you all for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't done so already. We're on every platform, wherever you find your podcast. That's where you can find us. Just hit the subscribe button and follow the podcast. We're on YouTube as well. Hit us up on YouTube, like and subscribe there as well. And again, I would genuinely love to hear your comments and your feedback as to how he handled this, or maybe how you would have handled this. So hit us up on YouTube as well. We're on social media. You can hit me up there at 12 Kyle across the board, at 12 Kyle podcast. We're on Twitter X, Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok as well. If you want to contribute to the podcast financially, you can hit us up. $TWELVEKYLE on Cash App. And you can also buy merch. Just click the link in the description box where it says merch. You can buy 12 Kyle Podcast t-shirts, hoodies, as well as coffee mugs. We got it for the low. And lastly, we have a new baby. That is right. We have a new baby. It is called the Rap Soul Podcast. It is the best music podcast that you've never heard. New episodes drop every Monday at midnight. You can find it wherever you find this podcast, on social media, and you can find it as well on every platform, every streaming platform, as well as YouTube. Rap Soul Podcast. It is the intersection where we have discussions about rap, soul music, hip hop, R&B from the 80s, 90s, and the 2000s. Again, it's the best music podcast that you've never heard. So check it out. Again, that's going to do it for me. This has been another edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. This one's called, he found out that his daughter was a stripper. And again, I welcome your feedback. I am your boy 12 Kyle. I'll catch you guys next time. 5,000. Cheers.
Thanks again for listening to this episode of the 12 Kyle podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you hit the subscribe button and share this podcast with a friend who needs the 12 Kyle podcast in their life. Every listen, every download, and every share helps us grow. Thanks for being a part of the 12 Kyle podcast community. We appreciate your support. We will catch you next time. 5,000.